Bonjour, bienvenue
Hello
à
and
cette
welcome
conférence de
to this
presse
press
de
conference
Marcello Mio
on
avec
Marcello Mio
telle assemblée de
with
talents
a wonderful
à mes
group
côtés.
of talented people.
Indispensable d'énoncer les noms
I hardly
de tous ces
need to
gens que
introduce
vous
them, in fact.
connaissez
You
très bien.
already know them
Et
extremely
le
well.
plus important est qu'ils puissent vous parler.
What's most
que vous
important
puissiez
is for them to be
leur
able
poser les
to
questions
speak to you.
que vous
So
souhaitez.
ask them
Je
whatever
vais
questions you may have.
poser la première.
I'll
à
ask the
Christophe
first
Honoré,
one to Christophe Honoré,
du film,
the director
très
of the film.
simplement pour
Very simply,
redire d'où vient cette histoire, comment se
where does this story
construit
come
ce
from?
projet,
How
à
did you
l'intérieur
put
duquel,
together this
tous
project,
ces gens qui t'entourent,
which brings
Christophe,
together all these
ont
wonderful people?
eu l'occasion de déployer une forme très particulière
It's a very
du travail d'acteur,
special format for an actor's performance. Philippe Martin is the producer, so I'd like to introduce him. Could you please tell us, however, about the general framework for this project, which is very special?
C'est toujours un peu difficile
It's always a little bit difficult
de remonter aux origines d'un projet. En fait,
to talk about the
la
beginnings
mémoire
of a
finit par
project,
transformer un petit peu comme ça. On
because
finit par penser qu'il y a un point de départ alors qu'il y
you
en
know
avait
there
plusieurs.
is a starting point,
En tout cas, je peux
but
parler certainement de
often there
la
are
complexité
several.
qu'on a construite
Of
avec
course,
Chiara,
with
film après
Chiara,
film.
film after film, we grew very close. I think it's the sixth time we've worked together, the seventh time, in fact.
8 avec le théâtre. Donc,
8,
voilà. Donc,
if you include a play in the theater.
Je ne peux pas échapper à Chiara Mastroianni.
I can't
Et moi, ça
sort
faisait
of
longtemps que j'avais
escape
envie, en
Chiara
fait,
Mastroianni.
de parler du
And I also
travail des
wanted to
acteurs, mais
talk
pas
about the
forcément, en
work
fait,
of the
sur un
actors,
plateau.
not on a set
Mais
so
cette idée
much,
de qu'est-ce que c'est qu'une
but
identité
this
d'acteur,
idea
qu'est-ce que
of
c'est
what's
qu'à un moment,
the identity of an actor.
Je sais pas comment dire ça.
I don't know how I can phrase this. What is the
Spectateur dans une
parallel
salle
when
de
you're a
cinéma et qu'on
spectator
s'identifie
in a
aux
movie
gens
theater
qu'on
and you
voit à l'écran,
identify with the people you see on the
et le
screen,
travail qui est en amont,
and
pour les
the
acteurs de
work
s'identifier
for
soudain à un
the
personnage.
actors
Et
who
ce
then have
travail de
to
double
identify with their
identification, c'est
character.
vraiment
You
quelque
have
chose
this
qui, moi, m'intéresse.
twofold
C'est
identification,
comme ça que
which
je me suis dit, en
I
faisant
find a
un
very
portrait
compelling
d'une actrice
idea.
particulière que je connais très bien, qui est Chiara Mastroianni,
know Chiara
en prenant
Mastroianni
des
very
éléments
well,
presque documentaires,
and
puisque,
I
j'aurais pu
researched
dire que
things a
Chiara
bit like
porte
a
un nom de
documentary.
actrice, mais je me suis dit que
I thought
j'allais faire avec la réalité de
that
Chiara.
I wanted to use Chiara as a real person. I could have chosen another actress. And I thought, well, why not make a film on a group of actors?
Ou sur la question de l'identité,
Or on the question of identity. What's it like to spend your life using the identity of others? What does that create in terms of joys, pleasures, and difficulties or troubles? And an additional question, Chiara. The director came with an idea, which is a bit odd in terms of the usual part a director offers an actor or an actress to play. How did you view this situation? Well, Christophe talked to me about this before he wrote the script. It's very special. He couldn't move forward unless, of course, I agreed. And I was deeply intrigued. I found this very daring, very bold, audacious. It's a risky wager, in fact. Because when things are so very different, you never know. I wanted, of course, to work with Christophe again, but as the years have gone by and as we have made several films together, you have such a feeling of trust between the two of us that when he talked to me about this idea, I said to myself, well, I wonder how he views things. I was very intrigued, and I was perfectly willing. When you're fortunate enough to have someone with whom you work on the basis of such absolute trust, it's wonderful. Things seem self-evident. A question to Catherine Deneuve. You said, when Christophe proposed you this role, initially you said it would be very boring. because there was no part to play. It was just you. Do you still feel the same way? Well, I think he would have written something that's not boring in any event. Play myself, something that I didn't feel particularly attracted to. It's not really my kind of thing. But then what happened? Philippe, Martin, and Christophe. Well, I read the script and I liked the script. I felt that it was very original, very amusing, full of tenderness. And it's so beautifully original that I said yes. First question? I have a question for Catherine Deneuve. The film talks about heredity, inheriting a name and an identity. In your career, was your name a gift or a burden more? A gift? Why a gift? What kind of a gift? Is a name difficult to carry? Well, it's my own name, so I can't say that I use the name of someone else, but it's her own name. For my daughter, obviously, it was far more complicated. It was far more a weight, a burden. It's very prestigious, but it's quite a burden to carry around. She has tremendous patience throughout her career in the cinema. One of the first questions was, talk to me about your parents, your mother, your father. And she never got annoyed. She has always been very intelligent in that respect.
Bonjour, Carl Richard, L'Orient Le Jour. Ma question est pour Catherine
I have a question for Catherine Deneuve. In 2007, you also played yourself in Je veux voir, a few months after the end of the war in southern Lebanon. What memories do you have of that film? Do you think it's still possible today to do something similar if things calm down in the Middle East? Well, let's talk about the film, first of all. The film, well, the idea was written by a Lebanese artist, and it was a documentary. The idea, there was an idea and no text. They are very talented artists who did this, and it attracted me as a project because it's a documentary. The intention was not to make a film. We could have made a 25 or 30-minute film. I met the actor the day the film was shot, and then we improvised the whole of the text. It was a very moving experience for me. It was deeply moving. It impressed me no end. I was not very familiar with Lebanon, and to go through the landscapes we went through to get to the border with Israel, it was a very striking experience. I love Lebanon, and it's unfortunate they're located between two such countries. It's hard to remain hopeful, and I'm amazed at their strength of character because they badger on. It's quite amazing. It's a wonderful memory for me. I think we'll try and talk about this film above all, Christophe Honoré's film. I would like to put a question to Fabrice Luchini about the part you play and the role of a friend. In the life of an actor, what's it like to have a relationship with a strong friend? Jean-Michel Frodon, I didn't really understand what he asked me to do. He placed me in an overall structure between Chiara and Catherine Deneuve and Benjamin Biolay, and I don't, intellectually speaking, really understand things. He said that I should be this or that way, and I tried to find in myself the means to portray myself. I don't think much when I play a part. He said, just say, I was the husband of Catherine Deneuve. I am your helpline. He told me to say these lines. If I was like that in life, it would be a bit excessive. Christophe Honoré has tremendous talent. He manages perhaps not to sublimate, that's a very weighty word, but he reveals to you parts of yourself that you don't know exist. Basically, he says, you are not such a terrible person, you're a really good person. Maybe he's right, but I'm not entirely sure. When I read the script, I said to Christophe, well, the role Fabrice plays is so nice and so pleasant, but it would be a source of vexation for him if you describe this in using all this praise. It's so different from what he usually does in the cinema. I was sure he would say yes. He's such a lovely person. And Melvil, you are the opposite in the character you play. It was surprising for me when I got the script. I said to Christophe before I read the text, of course, I love working with Chiara and with Catherine, but I was surprised by my part, because I'm not known as this version of myself. I called Chiara and I said, do you think it's normal for me to react in this way? Do you find I'm nasty in that manner and unpleasant? She said, no, it's not you, it's a different Melvil. So we have our names, our image in the film, but sometimes we're very different. I had the impression I was playing the part of a different Melvil, the role of an actor, and I felt it was quite interesting as an experience. They're like fictional characters inspired by real people. For me, it was easier for the others to understand what Christophe was trying to do. In the theater, I've seen him work like this. Based on something very intimate, he creates a real fiction. Often he talks about his family, the ghosts of his family. So it's something very personal, but he creates a story that's dreamlike and very Romanesque. In the end, you have a character who's inspired by a real person, but who is going to do something different from what the real person would do. And Melvil remembered these conversations. And I would say to him, Melvil, I know you would never acted that way. Oh, I know a tailor in Paris. Let's go together and he can make a beautiful suit. We never quarreled. Christophe was the one who invented that.
Oui, bonjour. Gérard Chargé de Cinézoom.
Gérard Chargé, Cinézoom. I have a question about the screenplay and the choices you made in what you talk about in the film. We have Marcello Mastroianni's career, which is emphasized. Was it difficult to choose the things you wanted to talk about in the film? And like what Melvil said, and this is a question for all the actors, when portraying this character, you were supposed to be yourself. Can you propose things to the director and say, well, look, I would like to improvise on this point, I would like to do this or that, contrary to what Melvil said? Thank you for this beautiful tribute in any case. The screenplay, to be honest with you, I didn't want to read biographies of Marcello Mastroianni. I didn't want the film to be a biopic in any way or to talk about his private life. I would have had the impression it was a form of betrayal because I'm so close to Chiara and I get along so well with Catherine and Nicole. I didn't want, therefore, to approach this film as though it were going to be a kind of biopic. I say biopic because you try to reveal a character by giving away his secrets. And in the film, we create an additional mystery around all these people. So, on the contrary, I sort of dreamed the life of Marcello. I suggested a couple of things to Chiara, the dog, for example. And that was sufficient, because it's not something that could suddenly be indecent, or I thought, well, we could have the dog, it will become a bit dreamlike, it's a kind of an open sesame. That's how we built up the screenplay. However, what I did do with huge pleasure, because it was the golden age of the Italian cinema, I watched lots of Marcello Mastroianni's films. And when you watch these incredible films, which we all know so well, that date from the 60s and 70s, when you're a director, you say, well, the film industry was magical at the time. There was this incredible magic about it. I hoped, in a fairly gentle way, that I would be able gradually in the film to create something which would be like a sort of a spell, a magic, a whole frame of mind. I wanted all the actors in the film to become sort of fantastical creatures with very moving frontiers and borders between real and life and fiction. Of course, when we start with a fairly sad scene, it's someone who's no longer here, who died quite young, and we ended up creating something that's very joyful and very lively. Nobody asked the question, but I just jumped in to the discussion. Sorry about that. Nicole.
Ah oui, le monsieur avait une deuxième partie de question.
Mais ça, c'était pour vous plus.
Ah ben voilà.
That was indeed a question for you.
Oui, en fait, pardon, oui, voilà, c'est ça. Moi, j'étais non, mais moi, j'ai répondu à la deuxième partie de votre question.
Yes, I answered the second part of your question, indeed.
Nicole, vous jouez
Nicole,
une place particulière parce que vous jouez une réalisatrice.
you play the part of a director.
Que j'aime beaucoup et que je connais bien.
A director I know very well and who I like very much.
J'ai trouvé ça vraiment, c'était adorable, c'était vraiment très ironique.
It was very ironic and very funny at the same time. I think this is exactly the person she is. A little bit excessive, perhaps.
Moi, j'étais plutôt comme Melvil, je vais pencher sur ma gauche. Non, c'est ça la force de ce film, c'est quand...
One of the strengths of this film is that we talk about identity. We are ourselves, we have our own name, and I say, no, it's a Spanish name. I don't think I'm the way I appear in the film. I'm not that brutal. No, not at all. There are lots of other scenes, too. I'm quite shy with actors. I'm very sensitive. And I've never found myself in a situation like the one in the film. That's the way Christophe writes things. He says, you're going to be yourself, but we are different at the same time. She's not brutal in any way. She may be a bit upfront. It's just the way I speak. I don't believe, however, that I'm too brutal. It was very, very funny, in fact, the way in which Christophe devised the characters. And I'm very happy. Without me, the film would never exist. He said to me, there's going to be a film about Mastroianni, and I launched the idea of the film. There was another thing which was very important for me. I wanted to create a whole galaxy of actors and to make them look like a kind of a company. And that's why I really wanted at the end for them to almost all come back as though they were part of the same theatrical company. It's a great pleasure for them to get together. When it comes to the scenario, everyone jumps in the car and they go off, and it's just, okay, I'm talking about an Italian film by Fellini. So the idea was that everyone get together again, and for me it was very important to have this ending. The film could only be made because the actors laugh at themselves, and they love to just have fun. At the same time, they are extremely generous when they're portraying their characters. I might add a small detail. I'm not going to talk about a story within a story, but he is like an orchestra conductor, and he depicts the situation of actors. Benjamin Biolay, Melvil, Poupaud, he puts us in a given place and who makes us part of the score. We're just components of the score. The big boss, the big creator, the main authority, and Nicole doesn't recognize herself in this identity, nor does Catherine. All these are the words dictated by a boss, and we're just the components in that overall picture. Yet he really depicts the condition of actors and actresses. In other words, we're positioned here or there, and we read lines which aren't really ours. And we refer to our condition, to our status. And Benjamin Biolay has this amazing talent. And the musical scenes, the other scenes are all part of the film. I love this person, and that's why I want to say so very openly. I'd like to react to what Fabrice Luchini has just said and speak of the presence of music in the film and the singer who we see, the musician on stage. How does this fit in to your film and in the overall composition? Chiara has made albums as well, and I'm not giving away a secret, but I think the album we did together pleased Christophe. It was Chanson d'amour, and it became part of the film. It's part of her life. She did a lot of music in a very professional manner, and I therefore think this is a good, big segment of her life.
Hello, my name is Lina Basi, Day Night TV, Ukraine. I would like to thank you all for this wonderful movie, full of humor, great music and kindness, a lot of kindness, which quite moved me and warmed my heart, especially the line in one of the last scene where the Catherine Deneuve says that she's never fighting with Chiara because she just couldn't. And my question is to Chiara. If it's true, and if you discovered something new about your father, about your parents' relationship, and maybe about yourself during creating this wonderful movie. And thank you again for your kindness.
Je réponds en français.
En français ou en français,
ouais. Donc, si je reprends, en fait, la question, c'est en gros, est-ce que j'ai découvert des choses Pourtant, on est des coquines, on la vie, on se dispute parfois.
Well, we do quarrel every so often. We're just human beings, after all. The depth of Catherine's character deeply moved me in the film. She rises above everything. Exactly when she says to Melvil, "Don't wake her up," she's like a sleepwalker. She doesn't lower herself in terms of having a quarrel when she knows the solution elsewhere. We're talking about a fiction, but for this mother in the fiction, it's not easy to have a daughter who opts for the father to that extent. It's funny at the beginning when she says, "Yes, of course, you're the daughter of your father, but you inherited a lot from me." We don't care whether it's Mastroianni or Deneuve. This kind of thing exists in all families. They try to appropriate the father or the mother. They say, "No, the child looks more like me," or "No, he looks more like you." "No, he resembles your husband." And then the friend says, "Oh, no, but your son resembles you as well." That's what's said when they see the person's face drop. In fact, this film talks about family ties, which we all know and have experienced. It's something that's very universal. It's this question of belonging to your parents via a resemblance with one or the other. All these are issues that everybody wonders about. It's like when people say, oh, you're really the daughter of your father, you're so like him. Did I discover things through the film?
No, pas vraiment.
No, not really.
Peut-être ce que j'ai découvert, mais c'est pas tant une découverte au sens.
It wasn't so much a discovery, but what I did was to realize
j'ai réussi, je pense, dans le manque d'une relation, parce qu'on voilà, c'est la vie, comme ça, nos parents à un moment donné un peu
I missed that relationship because my parents split up and so on and so forth. But through this work, I was able to continue to maintain this link, this silent link, this silent relationship with the character of my father and with my father, the actor and my father. And that came to me through this work. It's something I realized quite late on, and it's thanks to Christophe's film. I never said to my daughter that she resembled her father. I'm actually surprised now when people say I resemble my mother, because people so often say I look like my father.
Peut-être une question à Hugh Skinner,
qui est la personne for Hugh Skinner, who's a character who is a bit outside this overall assembly. How did you find your place in this composition comprising so many actors and actresses in France?
Well, it was a huge honor and a surprise. You know, we, like the rest of the world, hold French cinema in such high esteem, and I never thought I'd get to be a part of it because I don't speak any French, so it was very exciting to be here, full stop. And I watched Le Notti Bianchi, White Knights, and Maria Schell, her performance in that tried to capture some of the innocence and and how lost she was. You know, and obviously approached it like a real character because you have to, I think. I suppose it's all about the slipperiness of fantasy and reality. So, I mean, I played him like he was real, but whether he is or not.
OK. On a une question?
Oui, bonjour, Florencia Ángeles, W Radio au Mexique, en Colombie. Je voudrais savoir, bon, à la fin du film,
I would like to know, at the end of the film, we see the character, Catherine Deneuve, who's really moved and who hugs Chiara. But we don't know whether she's hugging Chiara or Marciano. I'd like to know for Catherine Deneuve and Chiara Mastroianni, what was it like at the end of the film? Were you moved, deeply touched by when you talked so much about your father, about your husband? For me, it was a little bit difficult. And was it difficult for you to relive all these things? For example, going back to the apartment where you lived all together in the past? The scene towards the end of the film on the terrace. Well, I remember it well. I suddenly hugged her. It was a bit ambiguous. It was a bit troubling, in fact, because above all, she was my daughter. It was a very troubling scene for me, indeed. Not for me at all. Well, you know, I always try to stand back from things. If I let myself be swept away by emotion, I would end up making a film just for myself, which wouldn't interest anybody else at all. So I thought it would be elegant vis-à-vis the audience to stand back a bit from my part, from my character. It doesn't mean I don't feel things or I wasn't moved. I didn't want all this, however, to mess up the film. The film is what it is thanks to the script. It's a very powerful film. I didn't want to let my own emotions, I didn't want them to take over the whole of the film. We have a number of scenes, including the ones you've referred to, and it's just a game. It's a film.
Non, mais sincèrement, sinon je le
Sincerely
dirais,
speaking, otherwise I wouldn't say that.
Pour nous, autour de la table, c'était quand même très troublant.
It was very
moi, en fait, tout le
troubling
monde me dit tout le temps des trucs
for
comme
us
ça, mais moi, je me
all.
rends pas
People
compte
keep
parce que déjà, je
telling
me
me
vois
things
pas
like
quand je
that,
suis
but I
en
can hardly
Marcello.
realize it.
C'est
I
dans le
was
regard
dressed
des
up
autres
as
que je sens un
Marcello.
peu,
It's
mais
through the
moi,
way other people
moi, ça
looked
va,
at me
quoi.
that I sensed
Ah oui,
things,
quand on
but
a
I was
arrêté en
fine
chimie,
with
donc
it.
c'est pas du tout pareil. Hein,
This hug, this kiss, well, it's just the way it was.
Christophe, parce que
And Christophe,
Fabrice décrit un peu
Fabrice has described your position as actors and actresses. He said you're like puppets, but often it's not really the way people view things. In your films, is there much scope for improvisation, improvisation suggested by the actors, or are things pretty well written? Fabrice is very elegant. He said everything was written down, but there's a huge amount of improvisation in the film, particularly on the part of Fabrice Luchini. There was a written scene which was very strange with Chiara. He talked about a pool. Marcello didn't like to say he made films to pay for his swimming pool. So we focused on the swimming pool and talked about it, and Fabrice then improvised. He talks about Melvil. Yes, because I was a great friend of Melvil for a year or two, and as to the swimming pool, I thought, why do they talk so much about the swimming pool? So go ahead now. During the editing with my editor, and it's very beautiful when he talks about the fact that an actor shouldn't have a personality. We're at the heart, the core of the film there. And we can see how, in fact, one could completely turn around what is said by Michel Bouquet and say the exact opposite. It's very surprising that Fabrice should say that kind of thing. You mustn't have a personality as an actor. On the set, I could see that what was happening was far more interesting than what was written in the script. In any event, it's my 15th film. I know now, I don't know how I can phrase this. The ideal time when making a film is the actual filming. All the truths you put in your script, well, they end up being a bit stereotyped. These are just ideas you have in your mind. At a given point in time, there are two elements, there are two things on the set that you don't control, and that's what makes your film really good in terms of being realistic. First of all, you have the weather. I love it when it rains, because all sorts of things happen, and it's the mood of the actors as well. We don't know why did they drink, have lots of drinks the evening before, why this mood. Some of the directors constantly refer the actors back to the script, but I cherish the moment personally when the actors improvise. I know that something special is going to happen. In this film, you have a given portrait of Chiara, you have the couple, and it's incredibly modern. The volleyball scene, for example. Well, I just say in the script they play volleyball. I gave them a ball, and I thought, we'll see what happens. And indeed, something does happen. Nicole starts to do warm-up exercises. It's a special kind of game, and it's a huge pleasure as a director. I think it's a pleasure for the spectator to see that suddenly life is there, and life is re-portrayed by the film, by the cinema. That's how I view my work as a director. One last question. I wanted to thank you for this film, which makes us think about films in the 60s and 70s in Italy. It's the second film in Cannes this year where actors play their same part. We have the second act of Poupaud as well. I'd like to say that was this an answer to Marcello's interview some years ago? He encouraged his daughter Chiara to become an actress. We have the impression it's a kind of an answer she gives to her father, who unfortunately is deceased. I have two questions for you, one for Chiara. At a given point in time, in your vision of Marcello in the mirror, did that trouble you? And my second question is for the other actors, too. Were certain things said in the film that you could have said yourself in your own life? Well, it didn't trouble me because people have said to me for so many years that I resemble my father. It didn't trouble me, but I really liked that moment. What was troubling, however, was to note that I didn't enjoy becoming myself again. I didn't like becoming Chiara again. I kept saying, well, can't I be Marcello? And I still haven't sorted that out. Yet we finished filming quite some time ago, so I don't know what's going to really happen. It's troubling to prefer when you're somebody else as opposed to yourself. Maybe there'll be a lot of work for psychoanalysis there. The other actors need to answer as well. Did you say things in the film that you could have said in your own normal life? Yes, I said I would love lasagna. I probably said that for real. It wasn't so successful. Yes, I was really criticized for saying that. Nobody else would have said something that in real life that they said in the film? I think everyone's forgotten already. Would you describe yourself as the director you are in the film? No, when it comes to my role, if someone says, "Are you okay, Nicole?" And I say, "Yes." I can't repeat what I said in the film, but it was very tough for me to say, okay, are you moving forward in life as you like? And it was tough for me to say, oh, yes, I guess so. I'd love to be able to tell someone, it's really horrible what you did. You need to say it with a great deal of panache. Okay, that brings us to the end of the press conference. Thank you very much.